Freedom Hill, we built thee round by round. From thy bosom, Princeville came, birthed from your hallowed ground. Standing tall through wind and rain, from the waters rose again.
The river has been flooding Princeville since the 1700s, and it was given to the freed slaves after Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, and nobody took the interest of what do we need to do to make it livable. It wasn't a concern.
Well, Princeville, like a lot of towns settled by our freed ancestors, tended to have swamplands that were, and a lot of times, allocated by former slaveholders. And so these lands were where, as part of Sherman's march through North Carolina, one of their stops on the Tar River was a place called Freedom Hill, where General Terry read the Emancipation Proclamation to the newly freed people. And so a lot of the people continued to stay and settle there until it was incorporated in February 1885 in honor of Mr. Turner Prince in Princeville. And what we have discovered is that it appears to be the oldest incorporated town by our freed ancestors in America. And these people were wanting to claim the American dream, acquire land, build their own home, chart their own destiny, and have their own families, and really fold into part of what President Lincoln called the last great hope on earth, the United States of America.
I am a citizen of Princeville, have been since my senior year in high school. While it's a small town, it is a community, and that's the reason I fell in love with Princeville.
Born here 77 years ago, right across the street. And we had to make our excitement by running the woods, swimming in the river, and we would be baptized at the river. And the minister would have you to come down dressed up like in robes and going singing, wading in the water to be baptized. And people would be standing on top of the bridge looking down at that old baptism site.
In 1999, Hurricane Floyd came through and the whole town flooded. And I was about 16 years old at the time. We had I guess about 10 days of water before it started to recede. My family home was displaced. Actually, we had about 7 people living in a travel trailer for about 7 months.
Floyd was about 46 feet. It breached the dike, and the total town was underwater. Every single building, every single residence was destroyed. Not just Princeville, but a lot of surrounding areas were flooded as well.
Last fall, I was starting my junior year. I had just found out that I would be the captain of my high school's cheer squad, and my GPA was increasing. I just felt like everything, was perfect, going well. And then we started getting a little rain, and one day they said that we had a flash flood warning.
On October 8th, 2016, my son was getting married on that day. And we had been planning for his wedding all year and expecting a beautiful day and beautiful wedding, and it rained and rained and rained.
We got information about a hurricane coming to the East Coast. So we set up an emergency operations center, and we saw that the conditions started to deteriorate. And so we actually started getting a lot of calls, trees down over the roadway, and we started getting a lot of water rescue calls.
Well, actually, on the day that the flood came, like that night that it happened, I was here. I was just here having a good time, and to know that this was like going to be my last day here for a couple of months was very overwhelming.
And I remember that night, a lot of calls coming in. We did over 40 water rescues that we can count. And so I remember watching the sun go down that day. And I remember watching the sun come up, and like we're still working, like, wow.
Well, the next day, the commissioners met and we talked about what we needed to do. So we made the decision to go ahead and evacuate the town completely.
And that's when they came by and was like, okay, we need immediate evacuation, like everybody has to go. And after that, I never returned home.
Well, after we were able to come back to, the water had been pumped out of the town, and we were able to come back, the devastation that was even greater than what, we had expected. Looking at the power of that water has a lot of strength. There were some houses that the water had actually busted all the windows out. Our fire station was totally just burst in like someone just kicked the doors in.
When I came back, I was on a boat, and I looked and I saw how the fire department was like underwater. I saw equipment floating down. I had cabinets that were floating out, doors that were ripped off the hinges, and I just kind of felt kind of hopeless. It was devastating to me because I knew at that point we could not provide any service to the community.
My home was completely destroyed. We had a red sign on the door. On the outside of our home, you could see how high the water had got in the home. So they completely tore the home down. And 5 months away from home, that is devastating. It was just it was a load.
We had about 500 homes that were affected by the flood in some way. About 200 of them were totally ruined by the storm, meaning that they would have to be torn down and rebuilt all over again. It was a feeling of dismay. It was a feeling of, what are we gonna do now? How are we gonna get back home again? We're going through this again. Our town is ruined, the waters had come back, and we just did not know at that point what to do.
These are the places that I spent the night at. If my parents had to go somewhere, I was here or at my other grandmother's house. So it's like 2 different homes. I've lost 2 different homes.
I would say about 25% of our population is still displaced. They want to be home, and our school, which is Princeville Elementary School, is dependent on the people to come back to open. And that's our major focus right now, getting our people back home so our school can be repopulated next school year.
Seeing my 2 cousins not have a place to really stay and to feel warm, that really hurt my heart. And then one of my best friends lost his house too, and just to see them was very heartbreaking. So the advice I would give is to just keep fighting. You will get through anything like this.
My grandfather was persistent. He was like, I ain't moving nowhere. I'm going back to 309 where I came from. No matter how many times we sat in that night and talked about it, he was like, I'm going back. I'm not moving.
My hopes for Princeville is, of course, that it'd be better than it was before the flood. My hopes for Princeville is that our school will come back and house our future, so that one day they will be standing right here, not with a story about a flood, but about a story of the rebirth of Princeville and the greatness of it.
Once we take care of the culprit, which is the river, then this would be an ideal place. I think it would draw people just to be a part of history. They'll be inquisitive about what role did it play. And you want to have these historical points of interest here where people could come and get not only an African-American perspective, but an American perspective.
We are a resilient people. We love who we are. We are determined to get what we need. Because when you think about what our ancestors went through in 1865 and in 1885, there were 35 black-owned businesses in the town of Princeville. That was when we depended on one another, we loved one another, and we were successful because of that. And that's what we're trying to get back to.
The resilience of our people is what's going to be the strength of Princeville. Our free ancestors that built it upon the foundation of, even though it was appeared to be sinking sand, but they built it up so that we will have somewhere to stand right here today and talk about it. We will be here. We won't go anywhere. If our ancestors walked through the mush and the mud, and we have a bit more solid ground that we can walk on, surely I believe that we can stand, and I think that we can hold out, and if we hold on to each other, then we'll be able to hold each other up.